Welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Here's your host, the Bitcoin Boomer himself, Gary Leland.
And welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show, brought to you from Dallas, Fort Worth by BizTV. So welcome to the show. This is the show where we talk about Bitcoins. And I want to introduce you to my great producer, Stephanie. Stephanie, now you always bring on our guests, or research our guests, and set up the things. And this week we have Ella Hough. What did you notice about Ella that you thought was interesting? I always like to get the little tidbits of what you thought.
So today's tidbit is that Ella is still finishing college. She's almost done, and she's lovely. Was able to communicate with her about scheduling this today, and I don't know, I'm just excited because from the little that I saw just from her digital presence, she's been in a lot of things. So I'd be really curious to see and hear her talk about all that. So.
Well, you're definitely right. She is the youngest person we've ever had on the show, being in college, and she's the first mother-daughter combo to ever be on the show. We've had her mother on here, Elisa, before. Elisa's a good friend of mine, and she has spoken at the BitBlock Boom, the conference I put on. So this is going to be a pretty interesting show for me because I really don't talk to a lot of college kids about Bitcoin. I'm usually talking to old farts about Bitcoin, so we'll see how this goes. And before we do go any further, I always like to throw out this little disclaimer there. You know, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not here to sell you any Bitcoin. I have nothing really that I'm trying to sell you right now. The whole purpose of this show is to help educate you about Bitcoin. We try to bring on great guests who have some information that would be, I feel, important to you. But we want you to learn about Bitcoin. That's all I want to do is teach you about Bitcoin. I truly believe that Bitcoin is going to change the world, but it's already changing the world. You know, it's changing our financial world already, and many other things will change because of Bitcoin. So you need to learn about this, and this is a great way to learn about it is by seeing all the great people we bring on the show. Because, like I said, we bring on some great people. So don't forget to subscribe to this show. I'm going to tell you this one time. Subscribe to this show, and also share this show with anyone else you know that's interested in Bitcoin. Okay, because that's all we talk about is Bitcoin. Now we're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll have Ella Hough, and we're going to go into the college life with Bitcoin. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in a few minutes. And welcome back to the show. You know, I think we're going to have a great show today. We've got our youngest guest we've ever had, I believe. I've been podcasting and videoing since, 2004. This may be the youngest guest I've had on ever in my entire life, no matter what the show was. But even though she's young, this gal is smart. She's a strong Bitcoiner, and you're going to be really impressed with her. Much more impressed than you're going to be with some of the older people I've had on the show. So let's welcome Ella Hough to the show. Ella, welcome to the show.
Oh, Gary, thank you. Such a kind introduction. Really happy to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you here. Like I said, you're the youngest person I've ever had on any of my shows, and I've done a ton of shows of different sorts. Yeah. You are the first also mother-daughter combination. We've had your mother Lisa on the show, and now the daughter. So that's some interesting stuff to talk about. First mother-daughter. My kids didn't care about Bitcoin at all. Gosh, it'd have been great if they'd have come over and we could have sat there and start talking about one of my favorite subjects. That's got to be something that I don't even know how great that is. It's got to be so great. You know, instead of them going, quit talking about that. We don't care, Dad. We know it's great. You know, you're a broken record, Dad. But Ella, tell us a little bit about yourself real quick.
Yes, and Gary, it's not too late. I'm sure one of these days your kids will come over and then you'll sit around the table and talk about Bitcoin. But thank you so much for having me again. My name is Ella Hough, and I grew up in Houston, and I am now in my senior year last year at college at Cornell, where I founded the first Bitcoin-focused study in a program called the Robert S. Harrison College Scholar Program. And on campus, I'm also helping lead the first study looking at Bitcoin adoption and financial freedom across 25 countries. And I also founded the Cornell Bitcoin Club. But outside of school, I'm really focused on how can we help more young people come into this space and learn about Bitcoin as kind of a tool to keep in their toolkit as they move forward in their futures. And so I co-founded the Bitcoin Students Network with Arshmalu from the Human Rights Foundation last year as well. And that organization is working with students across 73 countries now. I just was updating our sheet this morning, and Angola marks country number 73. And so that's just been really wonderful to meet students all over the world and kind of help them on their journeys of starting Bitcoin communities in their universities or just their peer groups. And so it's truly such a gift, all of the different involvements I get to have in the Bitcoin space.
Well, that's quite a bit there for someone so young, and I'm not being mean when I say you're young, so don't take that. You just are, and I'm old.
No.
You know, it's like people go, "Oh, boomer," and I go, "Oh, I'm sorry." I go, "Why are you sorry? I look in the mirror every day. I know I'm old. You look in the mirror every day, and I'm sure you know you're young." So that was not meant as a negative. You have done quite a bit, though. What are your plans? I mean, because you're getting out of college. I mean, you're a senior. You got like a month left, 2 months left. Do you have some plans already? And are they in the Bitcoin world, which I assume?
Yes, they are in the Bitcoin world. When we'll get into this, but when I started at Cornell, I transferred my sophomore year. I was like, you know what? I have to spend like the rest of my life, my time and energy working in this space, learning in this space. So I am very grateful that when I graduate in May, I am going to go spend a couple of months with the Gridless team in Kenya at one of their sites there. Really just being a sponge and learning a ton from them. And then I will be going back full time to Galaxy Bitcoin mining team in New York City. So still working for Bitcoin once I'm outside of school.
So you're going to move into the mining area. That's your deal. So
I am.
Well, that's really great.
Yes.
That's really great. I am so excited to talk to you. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Tell me something real quick. I got a couple questions I ask everybody, so let's kind of get those out of the way. What was your orange pill moment? How did you find? I'm going to assume through your mom, but it might not be. You might have come home and told mom, for all I know.
Yeah, I don't think I truly had just one moment. I mean, there was one moment when I kind of categorized. I went from I had just learned about Bitcoin to I truly discovered it. But I think the best way to describe my orange pill journey, perhaps, there's a quote from Danny Meyer, who founded Shake Shack, and he said, ABCD, ABCD, which stands for always be collecting dots, always be connecting dots. And really, I look back, like, how did Bitcoin click for me? How did all of this connect? And there were a couple of key moments, took many years. I would say the first kind of primer out there was when I was maybe 12, 13, I made a comment to my parents that I wanted to study history in college. And they kind of very politely said, no, it's really expensive to just go outside and breathe and live. And so we sat down and we made a whole spreadsheet of, here's an average starting salary, and then here's all of the expenses and retirement planning that you're going to want to think about. Really reiterating the point that, you need to go and get a really great job to be able to support yourself, because once you hit 22 and you graduate from college, you're on your own. We're raising you, but then you are a self-sufficient adult. We have confidence in you that you can do this, and you're going to need to go figure it out. So I think that was the primer, and I was probably like 12 or 13. But then when I was in high school, I was in this technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship program. And one of the classes that I needed to take for that was called blockchain technologies. And so that was probably the first time I really heard the word Bitcoin, but it was only presented as distributed ledger technology or, something to be used in supply chain management. And so it just didn't resonate with me. I had spent the prior year studying abroad in Beijing, and I was also working at IBM, and my head was just kind of on an AI ethics track. I then, though, was still, I felt like it was relevant to be somewhat knowledgeable about Bitcoin, blockchain at the time. I didn't know the differentiation. So I took Gary Gensler's MIT course, Blockchain and Money, on YouTube. But then the moment, if there had to be one moment, I think it was when I was on the plane coming back from the Oslo Freedom Forum put on by the Human Rights Foundation in 2022. My mom and I went together, and it was kind of in that moment where I was like, okay, Bitcoin is this tool that looks after every individual, all of humanity, 365, 24/7, that really protects their personhood and their humanity. And that is when I began the path to really seriously learn more. And, how can I work in this space, contribute to this space?
Well, it sounds like you've got the idea out on where you're going to go to contribute, since you're moving into mining. What your parents did kind of reminds me of how we treated our kids. We always told our kids they were never coming back. We were going to pay for 4 years of college, and that's it. And it took them 5. They needed to start working. And they both got out in 4 years, and both had a job when they got out because they knew they weren't ever coming home again. We would have let them, of course, but we had told them their whole life that they were not going to come home. And that worked out great, because they both turned out to be very successful and never came home, which we like. We like being empty nesters. So
Yes.
I like, though, about the fact that they laid out your expenses and what it's going to cost and everything. And I guess we only have like a minute and a half left, but are you saying that when you saw that being a history major wasn't going to get you to where you wanted to be at by the time you're 65 or ready to retire?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was like $60,000, $70,000. And if you go into the expenses, like even trash collection, like we were really detailed on this. And the number just at the end, it was negative. It was like minus $22,000. And so it was just, if you put the numbers on paper and really visualize it, I found it to be very helpful, and also provide purpose as to, why am I working hard in high school? Why am I trying to get into a good college? Why do I want a good job? Because really on the other side of that is getting to live a life where I have greater choice and agency over my time and how I spend it.
So you've really gotten into Bitcoin at a young age. I mean, you're going to see much more than I'm going to see. I may have 20 years left. You've got 60 years left. So we're exciting times now. At 100,000. Oh, I can't imagine what you're going to see in the position in life you should be in by getting into it so early. And I'm sure you know. With your mom being Lisa, to hodl, not to waste it. And we're going to get back and talk about those things and some more right after this word from our sponsor. So do stay tuned. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I'm your host, Gary Leland. And before we get started, I do kind of want to make a small disclaimer here. This show is just to educate you about Bitcoin. I don't have any Bitcoin I want to sell you. I'm not going to tell you where to go buy it. But if you want to learn what Bitcoin is, you'll enjoy this show, because we try to teach you what Bitcoin is. And this is a great show to share with anyone who may be interested in Bitcoin. So please share it and tell your friends about it. Now let's get Ella back on here. Ella Hough. Okay, so we got your orange pill moment. We know who you are. Both exciting things. I would love to be able to go back and trade places with you and be in my early 20s again and see what's going to come, 60 years from now, because I can't imagine what's going to happen 20 years from now with the way we're moving now. So tell us, another question I ask everybody is, what is Bitcoin? To Ella Hough, what is Bitcoin?
Yeah, to me, and I've been thinking a lot about this, of how do I try to explain Bitcoin to someone without coming off as polarizing. And I mentioned earlier this capstone project class, the Technology Innovation Entrepreneurship Certificate. And in that, really before I was down the rabbit hole in any fashion, I created my project called Asset, basically a financial security website app of how to help young people figure out how to take advantage of their greatest asset, their time. And so I think for me, Bitcoin is the best tool that I have to protect my financial future and my participation in the future. because if you have savings, that gives you greater agency and choice, as I was mentioning earlier. And Bitcoin is that tool to then go figure out what I want to do in my life and show up as my most full self, and really pursue, my why, what kind of makes my brain light up and what I want to focus on. And so, that's why it's, the Austrian economists have told me this is not a great analogy, but sometimes I think of Bitcoin as oxygen, as economic oxygen. We all around us need oxygen to breathe and live and pursue our goals and our passions. But we really don't spend most of our day thinking about the oxygen that we're breathing. We just know it has the values we want and we're good with it. And so for young people, I hope they put Bitcoin as like this tool in their toolkit that just gives them more, like, breathes life back into their future. So many don't want to set up long-term goals anymore or have faith in the economy. And so, Bitcoin is kind of like their economic oxygen and this, tool to help pursue their goals. And so I think at the root of it, that's really what it is for me.
Well, that's the first time we've had the oxygen answer, but that's a good a good way that you phrase that and put that. Speaking just now, you said that a lot of young people aren't planning stuff in long term, and talking with that angle, I always have a lot of people coming to me because I'm an old fart and say, hey, how do you approach boomers about Bitcoin? Like, I got some big secret, that's going to help them out. Yeah. Talking to their dad or granddad, or I'm probably old enough to be most of them's granddad. But I find young people are just as hard to orange pill as old people are. I don't think it's an age deal. I find plenty of kids I talk to about Bitcoin that are 20, 22, 23, and they just walk away and I'll see them and go, hey, did you ever buy some Bitcoin back when I told you about it when it was $3,000? I should have. Are you going to buy any now? Oh, no, I should have. I should. So do you see any difference, really? Do you find younger people are easier? Maybe you can give me a tip on orange pilling young people, because I don't see any difference. I think they both are, either they get it or they don't, and I don't see any big number difference. It's not like, they're more computer literate, so they're going to get it faster. That doesn't have anything to do with it, to me. Yeah,
no, I think, very minor things like, we use Venmo all the time. We're familiar with scanning a QR code and this concept of intangible money. Most of us don't have cash at all. So I think you get that little advantage. But really, at the root of it, most people have just never stopped to think and question and think for themselves. And so if you just start the conversation asking questions to that person of, what are you worried about? What are you interested in? How are you thinking about planning for your future? Most people don't sit down when they're 12 or 13 and make a spreadsheet of how many costs it's going to, take to live and expenses. And I think if you just have a very logical conversation and let the other person do most of the talking, in my experience, I've had success with that. But Gary, you're the expert. So maybe it's just continuing to be a resource to people because they also have to be ready to hear it.
Yeah, I think they have to be ready. One of the things I always joke about is when I first started telling people about Bitcoin, or not first telling them, but I was telling a friend of mine stopped me one day and said, Gary, you're in this Bitcoin, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, can you tell me about it? And it was a really good friend. So I was going to give him the super duper deal. Make sure he understood it. I spent like 20 minutes talking about Bitcoin. Thought I covered everything. And when I got through, he told me, he goes, do you have one on you? And I'm going, oh my gosh, I really did a bad job. If he still thinks I'm walking around with one in my pocket, so I found that from then on. That's the first thing I do say now. It's not that little coin you see on the news or in the background. So
yeah. And something else I also add for people in my age group, I have to introduce the concept of Satoshis very early on because people kind of just check out when they see, $100,000 Bitcoin. I don't have anywhere close to that.
That's a good point.
So introducing sats is really helpful as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point because, and you got to do that. It's kind of like, for me, it's kind of like getting rid of that thought that it's a coin. I got to do that right off the bat, and so does Satoshi. Yeah. So those two, I think, because, if you're explaining it to someone and the whole time they think you're going to pull out like a quarter,
Bitcoin.
and go, here's a Bitcoin, then they aren't like able to absorb any of the information you gave them, because they must be going,
Yeah.
well, how do they get that coin
Yeah.
to go through the thing there? He's not covering
Yes.
that. He's going to cover it in a little bit. So yeah, that's a really good idea, is covering Satoshis, because I know I leave that on the table a lot, and I didn't cover that, and they're going, well, Gary's fine and dandy, but I don't have $100,000, so Bitcoins are getting harder and harder for people to get compared to what they were. I guess we're getting close to being at the point that the average person is not going to be able to get a Bitcoin anymore. Average young person is going to have a hard time getting a Bitcoin. Average old fart like me, has some money in savings, but they're probably throwing it into an ETF or something anyway. They aren't going to cash it out to go buy a Bitcoin and try to learn the security there.
Yeah. And did you see, I don't know if Rivers fully put out their report, but kind of the transition of Bitcoin to individual investors to institutional investors. Did you see that graphic?
Tell me about that real quick.
Oh, sorry, I think I lost you. May you say that again?
Yeah, tell me about that real quick. I didn't see that, so I know what I'm hunting
Yeah,
for.
so I don't think the report's out, but they just posted a chart, and it basically showed like 525,000 coins moved out of individual investors' hands, and like 519,000 kind of increased in the institutional side of things. Basically, the point, it's moving from coins are moving from individuals to institutional. To your point of it's getting harder for people like you and I to actually custody Bitcoin themselves.
Yeah, I did see Plan B the other day announced he sold his Bitcoin and bought ETFs.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I was like going, that's kind of against everything that I've thought my whole life with Bitcoin. To want to do that. I didn't really understand that.
So I don't know if this is a great analogy, and I get the pros and cons of the ETF for people in various circumstances. But if you think about Google Translate, I can basically, if I pull up Google Translate, I can speak any language on earth. I can put in my English, and then I can have it translate to whatever language. And in that moment, when I have this intermediary of this app, this thing I'm trusting, I can communicate meaning to someone else. But the second the internet goes down, I don't have this device, then I don't have that meaning anymore. And so I know that's why I think for young people especially, you need to have Bitcoin itself, own your money. It's that you're not reliant on anyone else. So I don't know if it's a great analogy, but I kind of think about it like that.
That's a good way to put it. But the main thing is young people need to get their Bitcoin. I can really see an old person who's been saving money in their IRAs and stuff forever saying, I don't want to cash that out, that I'm going to buy an ETF, and they aren't that good at computers anyway, probably. So I can see it for them, but not for a young person. I agree completely. Okay, we'll be right back with a word after this word from our sponsor, so please stay tuned. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Before I bring Ella back on, I do want to mention to you the conference I host in Dallas, Texas, BitBlock Boom, located at bitblockboom.com. This is the 8th year for the BitBlock Boom conference. And what do we do there? We talk about Bitcoin. That's right. It's a Bitcoin conference, so we're going to talk about Bitcoin. So if you're interested in learning more about Bitcoin, or if you know a lot about Bitcoin and want to meet a lot of other Bitcoiners, check out bitblockboom.com today. You'll have a great time. Like I said, we've been doing it 8 years, so it must be halfway decent, or we had to quit by now. Now let's bring Ella back on the show. Now, Ella, we're talking about these young people, getting them all into Bitcoin and stuff. I want to cover one more thing. When you're talking to someone, someone that's in your age demographic, are you talking to them about buying wallet, a cold card, or whatever? Do you even get into that, or are you just getting them River Apple, and you're just going, let's just get them some, get them buying some, then we'll worry about that later? What do you cover on that?
Yes, so actually, also, I don't really ever tell someone to buy Bitcoin. You just go buy Bitcoin, because I think the second, if they don't have any investment in it, then the second the price goes down, they're going to sell it, and so it's just kind of a failure on that part. Actually, often I'll onboard them to Nostr Primal, because it comes in with the wallet built in, and then they can instantly start zapping and really just see this, Bitcoin in action, almost like, oh, I like a post, I'm going to go zap that. So normally we start there. And then eventually later on, I introduced to them the, different types of wallets, cold storage. We have those conversations, but it's certainly not in there at the beginning.
Well, let's talk about Nostr for a minute since you brought that up.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about Nostr, I think, in 15 episodes on this show. Now, Nostr is kind of like Twitter or X to a degree, except it's decentralized, I guess. It's kind of out there on its own. Tell us a little bit about what you just were talking about for any boomers, especially watching the show. They're not going to know what you're talking about with zapping people, sats and Nostr and stuff. Can you cover that? And don't you have something going on at Cornell with Nostr?
Yes.
So we can cover all of this. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll cover all of it. So actually, I'm going to steal Obi and Wasu, who founded Fedi. I really like his acronym, and he uses the acronym BLEND. So it stands for Bitcoin, Lightning / Liquid, eCash, Nostr, and then like a catch-all decentralized tech to basically describe kind of like a whole suite of open source decentralized protocols. And so Nostr, I think I first set it up in like 2023, BTC sessions, all his helpful tutorials helped me do it. And then this summer, I was able to go to Baltic Honey Badger in Riga. And right before the conference, they were hosting Nostriga, which is like the Nostr conference. They hop all over the place. And so I was, sitting in that conference hall for all those days, just hearing about it. And I got back to school. It's like, I have to introduce my friends and peers to Nostr. So we actually did a panel on Nostr at the Cornell Bitcoin Club. And you can I've streamed them on Zapstream, which was cool. So people zapped during those meetings. And we had people from Primal, Damus, Nostr Plebs. And so that was really great to kind of contextualize. But I think as Bitcoin, it comes with this, own your money. Nostr, it's like own your information, own your connections. The idea is that whereas today you might have a Twitter account, an Instagram, a LinkedIn, you have all these segmented platforms, and those companies own your identity and your information, and you can't take those connection or that information anywhere. With Nostr, it stands for notes and other stuff transmitted through relays. And so you get to own all of your information, and any client, as they're called, or like app, your identity comes with you. You can take it with you wherever you are. And so I think it's really powerful if we just think about how can I protect my privacy and my information and my identity. It does what Bitcoin does, except for kind of your persona online.
But you also have the Nostr Club or Nostr Bitcoin group at Cornell?
No,
am I wrong on that?
We just have the Cornell Bitcoin. We just have the Cornell Bitcoin Club.
Okay.
And inside of that, we talked about Nostr. We had a panel on Nostr, and then we also had Jeff Booth talk for our last meeting, and we covered Nostr there as well.
So Jeff Booth came up there to talk?
We online.
Okay.
All of our speakers have been through Zoom. I think it's quite a trek to get to.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I was going, wow, he really ranked. I like Jeff a lot. He's a really nice guy. I was going, wow, he's really nice. He came all the way up there. But see, that's a boomer line of thinking that he came up there. See, no kid would say that. Everybody else would know it was a Zoom meeting.
He did kindly offer the first time, but it's such a hike to get here.
I have never been up to that part of the country. You've done a lot of traveling also at such a young age. You've been to a lot of conferences. Because I've seen you at Swan, I think. I've seen you. Were you at Nashville last year? Did I see you in Nashville?
I was.
Yeah. I thought I saw you at and so, you've been to Riga. Are you going to Alaska?
Yes, and I find... No, not going to Alaska, but I was so happy to finally make it to BitBlock Boom last year as well. I'd been on my list, and thank you for all you do to organize that.
Well, yeah, it was great to see you. And your mom, I like your mom a lot. She's a very nice person. Her and Lynn, I think she's coming on our Spaces Monday night.
Oh, good. Okay.
The BitBlock
I'll
Boom
tune in.
Spaces. So we'll bring you up on there, and you can give her a hard time if you want to. So let's go back to what you've been building at Cornell. I don't think we've covered that
Yes.
enough. And we'll just
Yes.
finish out this last 3 minutes here and then carry that over to the next section. So tell us about Cornell and Bitcoin and the Bitcoin Club and everything you're doing there.
Thank you. Absolutely. So I started at NYU Shanghai for my freshman year of college, and then I transferred to Cornell. And I was planning on just studying computer science and Chinese. As mentioned, fell down the rabbit hole, had to figure out how to study Bitcoin. And so what it evolved into was a 15-month process for me to kind of receive permission to study Bitcoin officially. And so I realized kind of just all that came with a top-down approach to being able to study and think about Bitcoin. And so I wanted to come up with a bottom-up approach. How can we really start with the students aligned with Bitcoin's more grassroots ethos? And so I started the Cornell Bitcoin Club as kind of the proof of concept for the Bitcoin Students Network, which I also co-founded with Arsh Malu. And when I transferred to Cornell, I wanted to start this major and I wanted to start the club. But the reason it took 15 months is that with the club, I needed to know 10 people, and I just didn't know anyone yet when I transferred. And then with the major, it was really hard to find any professor willing to kind of put their name on it. And a lot of people said, oh, this sounds more like a hard rock metal band, or blockchain's the true innovation, or why don't you study the gold standard? And so really wanted to create something where if a student's looking at a school and a college, often they're looking to them to say, what should I study? What is valuable for me to know? And so creating this Bitcoin Students Network, it's like this bigger group that you can be a part of other people who also share your interest and kind of validate that what you're interested in is worthwhile. And so the Students Network's now in 73 countries, about 1,600 students, and it's really just kind of creating the space for conversations that otherwise wouldn't happen. And happy to go in more detail there. But the Cornell Club, now we have 124 members. I've transitioned it over to a new group, and we have 10 people in the club working on the first study looking at Bitcoin adoption and financial freedom through the Brooks Tech Policy Institute across 25 countries. And so that's been a really great project for them to work on.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. And we're going to go back in that when you come back. But I am glad I don't hear as much as I used to. I don't know about that Bitcoin, but that blockchain, now that's the deal, because I used to hear that all the time about 7 or 8 years ago. So that's nice not to hear very much anymore. When you said that, it brought a smile to my face because I heard that so many times. Hey, we're going to take a break for a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back for our last segment with Ella. So please stay tuned. And as I said earlier, share this show with a friend of yours. Do them a favor. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Something I always like to tell people, this show, as you can see, is not just for boomers. I'm the boomer, okay? So that's why it's the Bitcoin Boomer Show, not because it's a show for boomers. So I just like to get that clarification out there. Maybe that's a boomer thing for me to even be clarifying. But Ella, welcome back to the show. Had to get that boomer definition out there. Some people sometimes, I have people come to me and go, did you call the conference BitBlock Boom because it's Bitcoin, blockchain, and boomers? And I said, I never even thought of that until someone asked me one day. So no, that's not why. But let's go back into Cornell, what's going on, what you're doing there, because I found that kind of exciting. So why don't you just continue where you were if you can?
Yes, for sure. So I think I left off talking about the study. And so this is a 2-year study. It will end next May. That's when the report will be out. But it takes inspiration from Chainalysis for the past 5 years or so has been doing a crypto adoption index, kind of looking at crypto uptake globally. But there has never been a Bitcoin only focused one. And so that is where this study is coming in to really analyze Bitcoin adoption. globally. And so there are two parts to it. There is a quantitative, like a 1,000 person survey data across all of the 25 countries, and then a qualitative, this is interviews of about 10 individuals per country. And so we have, as mentioned, 10 students from the club who are doing these interviews. And so it's been a really nice way to kind of have like an interactive element to learning about Bitcoin, because with all of the Bitcoin Students Network clubs, there's a careful balance. You don't want to just have kind of lecture style. You really want to try to, how can we get people more hands-on, engaged, involved? And so they all have 5 countries that they focus on, and they do these interviews with people from all over talking about Bitcoin, if they're seeing it being used as a tool for financial freedom or not, and writing up reports. And then it will all get compiled into a report next May. And so the data is slowly trickling in for those surveys. And it's been really just a grateful project to be able to be a part of.
Oh, that's pretty exciting stuff there. Yeah, gosh, I'm really pretty impressed with you. I have to say that. But sometimes I'm easy to impress, being an old fart. So I do have to throw that out too. But I don't think in this case it was easy to impress. Your mom.
Well, we have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say your mom and dad did a good job. So.
Yes, they're amazing. And I was going to say at Cornell, Professor Sarah Krebs is who I'm working with on the study, and she's a fellow at the Bitcoin Policy Institute, and an incredible resume and all she's done. So people go Google her after. But and you mentioned all the conferences I've been able to go through. All that I get to do is because of the people in this space who make it happen.
Something I was talking earlier about the orange pilling young people or talking to young people. I find when I do run into a young person, I don't know, maybe there's a better word to call them than young people. I don't know. That's just what I call them. But when I do run into a young person who already knows about Bitcoin, they're really into shitcoins. Oops, I'm not supposed to say that, but they really are. I find that a lot. I don't find that with old people because they're not into anything. So you can kind of direct them and say, you just want to go down the Bitcoin road, don't mess with these cryptocurrencies. But I find that I talk to a lot of young people, they're going, yeah, I'm really into XRP. That's going to be $100 a coin and stuff. Is that just me, or am I right on that?
Yes, and I'm trying to come up with a better way to articulate this, but I feel like we're missing a sense of value a bit broadly in society, especially in younger generations. So I grew up like handwriting thank you letters and sitting around the table on the weekend. You're
so right on that. You're going, did they get that item that you sent them? Didn't even arrive? And you want to call them, you're going, I want to make sure they don't think I didn't send them something.
Yeah. And so, social media, it's just, we don't even, it's just like so, it takes so much of our attention, and we're not even fully processing. We're losing control there. We don't look at like physical photographs. We don't, when you sit down and have lunch with someone, everyone's on their phone. And so I think for me, I grew up with this very strong sense of true value and appreciating value and thinking through why something is valuable. But a lot of people that I talk to who are also into kind of blockchain and everything but Bitcoin, they recognize that they want to convert it over to Bitcoin eventually. But some of them also say, yeah, I know it's a Ponzi scheme. I just want to gamble in it so I can move to the Bahamas and, retire when I'm 25. And it's like, but I think you're just missing, community. Community is so critical for living a happy life and a fulfilled life. I don't want to leave my community and my family. I want to build a family and build a community. And so, yeah, I just think there's a lot of influences that we're not even fully processing that are attracting to these. I also
think that people who are really into cryptocurrencies are really just worried about their own money. They're just worried about themselves, making money. How much money can I make off of this? It's a gamble. Maybe it's not a gamble, but I'm going to make some money. Where Bitcoiners, now don't get me wrong, most Bitcoiners want to make some money, especially in the U.S. We're a capitalistic country. I'm admitting that. But I think Bitcoiners, true Bitcoiners, the majority of them think, wow, I can make a lot of money here and help save the world. They got that in the back of their mind, a lot of them, because Bitcoin can save the world. If you're using something as a currency that's a limited, wars can't last forever. That's one of the first things I think that would disappear under a Bitcoin standard. So many things would happen, and I think Bitcoiners have that in the back of their mind, that they are going to have this money when they retire or whenever they want it, but they're going to help save the world. Where crypto people, they could care less about the world. That's not their goal. They don't even have that in their brain of thought. Am I right on that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin, I feel like I know less every day. It opens up the whole world to you of how things work. And so if you really come in and appreciate kind of like the intellectual, the philosophical side of Bitcoin, you get to, Gary, what you were just saying about, no, I'm here to build this parallel system where we can, grow the sovereignty and freedom of every individual. And if you're just in the mindset of, I want more dollars, not, I want more Satoshis, you're not going to get that. There's kind of a barrier up there. And I will give young people a lot of grace because you're just in this super fast hamster wheel that I think is just getting faster. It seems like every year you barely have time to give super critical thought to just how the world works. And it's a privilege for me that I take it that I've been able to study, history of central banking.
we always say, Kathy and I, that we're so glad that social media wasn't around when our kids were in high school, and they didn't have anything but a flip phone. We only have 2 minutes left, so before we go, tell people where they can follow you at, blah, 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 anything else you want to give out there. For sure, do it now.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, so Twitter, 21MMFORTHE21ST, or just my website is ellahough.io, which might be easier. And if you're a student listening, please reach out. We'd love to meet you, get to know you. It's kind of the highlight of my day when I get to do that. But those are the best places to find me.
Great. So we got to admit, since we still have a minute left, I think that's a really good point you made about, the kids are really more on a hamster wheel now than they were, especially when I grew up. We were just out on our bikes all the time, heck, even when we were 18, we're out riding our bikes all the time, probably. Where now I don't ever see kids in the neighborhood riding their bike, to be honest with you. I don't know if there are any kids in the neighborhood. I never see them. I figure they must all be on their game consoles inside their house, but things have definitely changed. Hey, I do want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been great kind of getting to know you because we've met before, but we've never talked in much detail. And like I said, I am so impressed with you and so jealous that you're got 60 years or so, probably going to be 100 years with the way they're going to figure out medicine to see what Bitcoin does. Yeah. I'm happy with dying at 80 or 90. That's fine. I just want to see what Bitcoin does, because that's a rabbit hole that you just can't get enough of. I mean, I've probably got 1,000 hours into this. I'm still not near the end of the rabbit hole. So thank you for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. You've kind of made my day talking to you with your bright personality there. I appreciate it.
Well, likewise, Gary, and thank you for all you do and all you've done for years for this space in our community.
Well, I appreciate it. And everybody stick tuned. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsor. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I really did enjoy talking to Ella. What did you think, Steph? My great producer, Stephanie here. What did you think of Ella?
Ella was amazing and quite accomplished. I was really happy to have met her. It's going to be really exciting to see what all she gets to accomplish in the future, and hopefully you'll stay friends and we can get to see her again. Yeah.
Hopefully, I got about 20 years left. We could bring her on the show in about in about 10 years.
Put it on the clock. Put it on the calendar.
Yeah, go ahead and schedule that now because we might run out of openings soon.
She'll be like the president of the Bitcoin country
or something. Who knows? Some people end up doing great things in lives. Yeah. I do want to make sure I told you earlier about BitBlock Boom, so make sure and check that out, bitblockboom.com. That's our conference. It's a great conference. You really, really do want to see that, and I promise you're going to have a great time if you go. I also want to tell you about a book I helped co-write, Bitcoin and the American Dream. That's Bitcoin and the American Dream. You can find that Amazon. You can go to Bitcoin and American Dream. You can find that book anywhere. It's a great book. It's about a 30-minute. You can read it on a flight. So I want to say it's 30 minutes. It's a couple hour read, but if you're trying to find out the basics about Bitcoin. This just gets to the meat and potatoes. It's a great book to buy for someone you're trying to tell about Bitcoin because it's easy to read. So do check that out. Also want to tell you about our meetup we do, meetup.com/bitblockboom. We usually do that at a barbecue restaurant if it's warm. So check that out and join our meetup group at meetup.com/bitblockboom. And also follow me on Twitter. That's where I am most of the time. That's the easiest place to contact me is on Twitter, or X. I don't know why I'm saying Twitter. I know it's X. So find me, just go to x.com/Gary Leland and you can find me there. But this is, I say this over and over to people. Bitcoin is going to change the world. And you need to spend a few hours researching this. You really do. You don't want to be caught off guard because it's going to happen. And when it happens, it'll happen quick. I remember when Bitcoin was, under $3,000. And now we're talking $100,000. Come 5 years from now, we could be at $500,000. I personally believe that the chances of Bitcoin going to $1 million are higher than it going to zero at this point. Okay, so do check out Bitcoin and start teaching yourself about it. That's it for today's show. Look forward to seeing you next week. And thanks for joining us. And remember to stack those sats. Adios.